And here on DawgNation Daily, happy to have from the SEC Network, the Mac and Cube radio show in the morning, and his own podcast. Very busy man in the media world these days. It is Cole Cubelic joining us here on DawgNation Daily. Cole, really appreciate your time and hope SEC Media Days. We're recording this on a Monday, so it's kind of just getting started, but hope it's treating you well thus far.
It's been good. Busy, obviously. It always just kind of feels like it's jammed nonstop. But that's good.
For sure. Well, you said something a couple of weeks ago that we've kind of certainly paid attention to with our show and our audience. In your ranking on your own podcast of the top offensive lines in the SEC, you did have Georgia number one. And
I did.
What's weird is based on the way the unit probably performed a year ago, that almost counts as a little bit of a contrarian take because I don't know that – obviously that was certainly not the case for Georgia a year ago.
Sure.
So when someone like you who's obviously watching this as closely as you are, when you said that, at least within DawgNation, that got a lot of attention. Would you mind talking a little bit more about kind of what led you to that opinion?
There are always going to be things, I think, inside this league that you give a little bit of benefit of the doubt to. And then sometimes I think we have to look at it with different clarity, as into, well, I saw this player perform for a smaller amount of time, and just because he's not a 12-game returning starter doesn't mean he's not going to be able to be a good player. I think some of the things last year, you had guys banged up. You had some guys that just flat didn't live up to expectation. Let's take an Ernest Green, for example. 2 years ago, I've got great tape of Ernest Green. Mm-hmm. I've seen him play well. I've seen him do big-time things. Last year, it wasn't exactly the way we thought it was going to be. I'll lean a little bit more towards contract year, being with Stacey Searles for another offseason, being around Kirby Smart another offseason, that writes itself, and that gets where it needs to be. Other players like a Drew Bobo, okay, like he's not where Cedric Van Pran was a couple of years ago, but I've seen him play, and he's played well. And if there's anybody on that team that should have good grasp of the offense, it should be that young man.
Yeah.
So I think when you start to piece those things together, and instead of just saying which team out there has the most returning starters at their 5 spots that have played this many games together, how often can we even look like an offensive line like that anymore?
Right.
Very few are going to be able to bring that kind of consistency and continuity. But they do have multiple players that have been around their coach in that system that I have seen played some good football. And so that's why maybe a little benefit of the doubt went to George as opposed to some others.
And it was that line right there that stood out so much to me, and we amplified this on the show, the idea that Ernest Green, in your mind, as someone who's watching film and actually doing this from an evaluative standpoint, that you said, I've seen good football from him, because the narrative around Georgia right now is, okay, you've got two relatively, I guess, unproven commodities with your two tackles. Monroe Freeland on the one side, former elite recruit. Ernest Green, former elite recruit, who, as you said, has played good football. And I think when someone like you says that, I think it has the potential of kind of calming the nerves of some Georgia fans who are like, from a potential standpoint, the two Georgia offensive tackles look about as good as anybody, but obviously maybe Georgia fans a little concerned just based on the fact that this feels like less of a proven offensive line than we have at times seen Georgia bring back to begin a year.
Yeah, and it's I think the other part too here is, what is the demeanor of a Kirby Smart football team going to be? Physicality. It's going to be built in the trenches, and it's going to be built on physicality. So there are offensive lines out there that at times have played good football, but a lot of it is based on tempo. A lot of it's based on spreading the football out. A lot of it is based on matchups. Georgia, a lot of times, is going to be built on going north and south, and that's really on both sides of the ball. Defense, strike, shed, win the one-on-one battle against your opponent. And I still think at the end of the day, Kirby Smart and his offensive staff want to be that type of a team. And so when I know that that's going to be your mentality going in, I have an understanding of what you're going to be allowed to do. I'll give you an example. So this morning I had a conversation with Matt Moscona, who covers LSU, and he makes a statement about how LSU's offensive line wasn't good in the run game last year. Well, I view it a little bit differently, as in that group wasn't given the opportunity to go run the football and prove what kind of a run-blocking unit they could be. They were last in the SEC in rush attempts. So if I know you're going to be given the opportunity to be great in that aspect, that's where I'll give you a little benefit of the doubt. And if I've seen you play good snaps, I'm going to say I've seen you play good snaps. Ernest Green has. Monroe Freeling had. Did Monroe Freeling have some youth mistakes and headaches? Of course he did. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there was a little bit of position juggling, not knowing that the position was just going to be his. And I saw him settle into it a little bit later. So he's another guy that I think could surprise some folks with how well he plays this year.
It's always interesting to me when Kirby Smart chooses to be really specific. And during spring practice, he was very specific. He said, we want to run the ball better and we want to stop the run better. Well, the offensive line conversation, that's how you get there on the one side. when you look at the defensive line, obviously 2021 you have essentially 4 future first-round picks on that defensive
Correct.
line, and then Jalen Carter anchored the national championship team in 2022. I don't know that anybody gets back to that in terms of that level of talent, but can Georgia, in your mind, kind of build back that defensive front where they're kind of wreaking havoc and kind of causing some fear in the hearts of opponents when it comes to what they're doing up front defensively here in 2025? Because I think most Georgia fans think that's a big need over there.
I think you kind of alluded to it, and we're going to take that defense from a couple of years ago, and that's going to be the standard, and that's going to be what we compare it to. It's no different than Alabama. I look at Alabama's D-line right now, and people get mad when I say they're not super scary. Well, I've seen first-round draft picks up there, top 10 picks up there. We know what scary looks like, and Georgia might not be that, but at the end of the day, I'll go back to you got 3-4 guys up front. Some have moved around position-wise, but understand what the mentality is and understand what's going to be asked of them. I give that a little more credit in today's college football than some should. Are they going to be dominant? Maybe not. But can they be really good and can they be problematic? I think they can be. I think experience of some guys that were role players in the past now being asked or given the opportunity to say, hey, this is your deal. It's your time to shine. I think they can still be one of the better groups in the SEC.
I'll finish with this kind of outside the Georgia conversation here for a moment. Is there an SEC team that we're not talking enough about right now? Because all the conversation sort of centers around the usual suspects. If we had to broaden it out and if you had to say, hey, maybe pay a little bit more attention to so-and-so. Now, this is a hard question because eventually everybody sort of gets their time in the spotlight because there's obviously a rabid following in the SEC. But is there an under-discussed SEC team in your mind at the moment?
I'll just say this. I think that right now my story of this entire week is the middle of the pack. And I think if you wanted to say Georgia, Texas, Bama, some people are going to throw LSU into that of here are our top shelf contenders to go win the title, teams that we really believe can do it. Who's next in line there? So you can take any number of those 4 that you want. And I think if you went Ole Miss, Florida, Auburn, if you went maybe to even an Arkansas team with Taylor Green and Bobby Petrino back, South Carolina is going to fall into that mix. Oklahoma is definitely in that mix. I could convince you that those teams will win 9. I can convince you that it will win 5 or 6. So they all have some real big obstacles and hurdles to overcome, but they all have really high ceiling points. So I think it's just the middle of the league. And the bigger question in that might be who's going backwards.
Yeah.
I think Tennessee takes a small step back, but Tennessee's D-line is going to be really good. Tennessee has really good skill. They have a lot of guys that have played in that defense, in that offense. So are they going to go back to 5 or 6 wins? Probably not. Just maybe not a playoff team. So I think it's really who goes back. Vanderbilt's not going backwards.
Right.
They got everybody back on defense. They added some offensive linemen. I think they have the most underrated running back in the league in Cedric Alexander. We know Diego Pavia is a gamer. They have that whole staff back. They're not going backwards. Someone's going to have – we can't all win 9-10 games. So somebody in the middle of that pack is going to go forward and somebody's going to go back. And I'm having a horrible time figuring who's going to go back than maybe who goes forward.
As we say goodbye to you, I'll tell you this, and I mean this sincerely. I love the fact that you, your radio partner, Greg McElroy, you guys are out there talking college football every single day because we love doing that here at DawgNation. 52 weeks a year, we're talking college football. I love the fact that on your own podcast, your radio show, and everything else, you're kind of out there doing that too because in the SEC, we can't get enough of that. Even during the offseason, that's what we want. You're doing a great job of doing that. Thank you so much for being
Appreciate
here
you having me.
on DawgNation Daily. And remind folks, how can they find the podcast work you're doing and radio stuff and everything else?
McElroy and Cubelic in the morning is 7 to 10 Central, jocksfm.com or on YouTube. Cube Show every week we do it. It's on YouTube wherever you get your podcasts. And Tuesday Date Night podcast I just started with my wife this week.
Oh, that's really fun. So Cole Cubelic, make sure you check that out. It's a privilege to have him here as a part of DawgNation Daily.